Does anyone else feel like a certain console's made for a certain game genre or franchise? Like the NES and 2D platformers, the 360 and first-person shooters, the Wii U and Zelda. It just feels like certain platforms are meant for something, and with the Nintendo DS, its match is Pokémon. More Pokémon games came out for the DS than any other Nintendo console until the Switch, and many people my age view these games as the peak of the franchise. The first installments to come out for the DS were Diamond and Pearl in 2006, followed by the typical third version, Pokémon Platinum in 2008. So I thought it'd be nice to take a look back at Gen 4 if the remakes haven't only come out a year ago, and with Scarlet and Violet coming out here soon. And I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't enjoy these games that much when I first played them. Now, a lot of it has to do at the time I was doing it. It wasn't a good time. I was just, I didn't really play them that much, but you know what? I'm gonna give it another shot, and hopefully this time I'll be able to enjoy these games completely. Let's begin. These games take place in a new region, Sinnoh, based off Hokkaido, the northernmost island of Japan. And because of that, it's pretty cold, about as cold as Northern Europe, and Platinum reflects this by having snow piled up in a number of places, alongside some new winter outfits for the player. The professor of Sinnoh is Rowan, a slightly angrier version of Professor Oak. Your rival in this game is a boy named Barry. He's not an overachieving jerk like Blue, a criminal like Silver, or a casual rival that's a possible love interest like May/Brendan. Barry has known the main character for whole lives, kind of like Blue, only he's a lot friendlier towards you. His personality is a lot more erratic, and overall he's more of a comic relief kind of character. Honestly, before I replayed this game, I really didn't remember how good of a rival Barry is. I mean, I think he's a good friendly rival done right, because nowadays most rivals are just too friendly towards you. He has just enough to where you're kind of annoyed by him, but you don't hate him. So yeah, props to the game developers for making another good rival. Unfortunately, after this, the only good rivals for the rest of the series, in my opinion, at least excellent rivals, are in Black and White. You have Chirin and Bianca. And they're the last ones to be super interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's some others that are okay, but I feel like now in like X and Y it was quantity over quality. In Sun and Moon, it was okay, just not as good. And then Sword and Shield, yeah. After that, there's Lucas/Dawn. Sort of like in the previous game, this character will be whatever avatar you don't choose. If you choose to play as male, this character will be Dawn. If you choose to play as female, this character will be Lucas. He/she is an assistant to the professor, and throughout the journey, instead of competing with you, they help you out. They teach you stuff and give you things, and are relevant to the plot and a couple other scenes in the game. And overall, they're okay. They're a decent character in the game's story. And as for new things added to the gameplay, there's a lot to cover. Like every other DS game, the top screen is the main game display, while the touchscreen is used for a number of things. Firstly, during battles, the move commands pop up on the bottom screen, leaving the top screen a lot less cluttered. Outside of battle, you can use a new device, a Pokétech. You can use it to do a number of things on the touchscreen, including a watch, a step tracker, an item radar device, a calculator in case you decided to play some Pokemon while doing your math homework, a memo pad in case you want to write something down but don't have any pencils or paper lying around the house for godforsaken reason, a map, and whatever the hell this is. I do really like the Pokétech, honestly, though. It brings it back to the mid-2000s when Diamond and Pearl came out and cell phone apps were just starting to take off. But honestly, I forget it even exists most of the time and pay no attention to it. However, the most significant thing Diamond and Pearl added to the series was its online functionality. In 2014, the server shut down, and it hasn't been possible to play online for almost a decade now, but fans have made their own servers to bring this mode back to life, which goes to show how amazing a fan base can be at times. Moving on, we have aspects that weren't exactly new, but improved upon. We already discussed last time how Ruby and Sapphire's time cycle wasn't as good as it was in Gold and Silver, right? Well, here it comes back full force. The lighting in wild Pokemon change depending on the time of day. There are once again lots of time-based events. The biggest improvement compared to Gold and Silver here is how the in-game clock goes off the console's internal clock, not a battery. That's also the battery used to preserve the save data, and dies within a decade most of the time, which is awesome. Truly awesome. You can also you change the clock, it's not good. Time-based events don't work for a day, as I'm told, so, and you can't really cheat, so yeah. As for my Sinnoh team, I think it's one of the best Pokemon teams I've ever had, honestly. I once again managed to get all 3 starters. I already chose Piplup when I played Diamond a few years back, so I bred a Piplup from that. A copy of Platinum I had a Grodile, so I traded that to my copy of Diamond, and I bred a Turtwig from that, traded it back over, and then I chose Chimchar for my starter, and I had all 3 of them, which again made my team kind of overpowered, but I'm not complaining. Chimchar is probably the best choice though if you're playing Diamond and Pearl because of a lack of fire types, which is something I'll go over in a bit. Chimchar evolved into Monferno and then into Infernape. It's part fighting type like Blaziken and has good speed. Piplup evolves into Prinplup, which then evolves into Empoleon. It's part steel type. And what was awesome for me is that it was born with some of the best moves my old Empoleon had in Diamond, like Hydro Pump, Surf, Ice Beam, stuff you don't get until the late game, making the earlier game so much easier. Turtwig evolved into Grotle, and then into Torterra. Torterra is part ground type, although it does take a while to learn strong moves. My other team members include a Honchkrow, a Garchomp, and a Galeed. All of them took a while to get strong, at least early on in the game, but by the end my team was unstoppable, destroying everything it touched. Well, almost. And if you don't get the reference, my Galeed is named after an Earthbound character and not feces. But if there's one word I'd use to describe this game, it's relaxing. The atmosphere just gives such a chill vibe and soothing vibe, with its music and vast areas to explore. It's kind of the game that's best to play late at night or early in the mornings, which are the times I played this game the most often, as you can tell from the footage. Another thing I found different that's odd is just how differently I viewed my goals in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum compared to the other Pokemon games. In the rest of the series, I'm thinking about gyms and a main story, but here, there's a heavy emphasis on, exploring routes and fighting trainers, getting your team stronger, and, just my mind is just on roaming around and building up my team. So, it's awesome. I liked it playing this game like this. It's pretty relaxing, and I really need a game like this at a time like this where I'm just stressed and, everything just sucks right now in my life. Like, seriously, I don't want to go into detail, but man, I really needed this game in Emerald, so thank you, this game, for existing. Alright, now it's time to go over some negative aspects of Gen 4, and unfortunately there's a lot of them, especially in Diamond and Pearl. Platinum did fix quite a few, but it's still flawed in a lot of ways. Like I said earlier, Chimchar is the best choice for a starter because fire Pokemon in Sinnoh are scarce. In Platinum, you're able to get more early on though, so that's cool. And like in Ruby and Sapphire, there are once again 8 HMs. So if you don't want to switch out HM slaves constantly, you can kiss a third of your team's moveset goodbye. I mean, to be fair though, Rock Climb, Surf, and Strength are at least decent. You only need Waterfall and Defog a few times in the whole game, so... and Fly, yeah, I would never not have Fly. Now, the biggest problem with this game isn't anything major or really something you notice. It's hard to describe what exactly it is, but it kind of lacks polish. I feel bad for saying that, but what I mean is there's a lot of minor things that really need it tweaked. Like, for instance, you see my footage right now, all these bars on the side, these borders around the screen that are like white or black or whatever that shouldn't be that way. There's glitchy edges around the screen. That's actually something that's in the game. It's not like a glitch with my capture card or something that's unique to only certain versions of the game. In every single Gen 4 game, it was there. No one noticed that, and I don't know how. I mean, to be fair, on the actual original DS, it's kind of hard to notice, but the fact that it went so long without anyone noticing is kind of surprising. Another problem is just how slow everything is. Now, walking isn't too bad, and it's way better in Platinum than it was in Diamond and Pearl, but things like surfing, and especially when HP goes down, it's just a nightmare. After that though, I'm gonna be honest, there's really not a whole lot of problems with this game. It's pretty good for the most part. So overall, I'm really glad I gave this game a second shot. This is kind of off topic, but we have to talk about the old Chateau. Probably the spookiest place in Pokemon. Yeah, Lavender Town is freaky, but it's mostly seen that way because of either creepypastas and the limitation of the original Game Boy. To be honest, I always thought the Lavender Town theme was awesome. I listened to it all the time when I was in my early teens. While I was a little creeped out by it, it never made me feel uneasy or, commit suicide like those creepypastas. The old Chateau, meanwhile, is an old building in the middle of eternal forest, which is already kind of creepy on its own, but relaxing in a way too. So, creepy and relaxing. That's actually a good combination for me right now. Halloween, need stress reliever, so this is awesome for me right now. When you first reach the entrance, you can't enter though, because you don't have cut quite yet. Later, when you come back to the place, the gym leader of Eterna City, Gardena, is out in the forest right outside the mansion. She does the whole "I'm not scared" trope and then runs off, leaving the player alone to explore the place. The music here is unsettling. I'm honestly impressed at how creepy and unnerving it is. This song always puts you on edge, thinking someone's gonna pop out at any second. And I swear to God, I get a heart attack every time I get a random encounter. What's weird though is that there's not really a whole lot in the Chateau if you really think about it. There's no trainers, no super important items, and there's no major relevance to the story. There's a few items here, and a rotom to capture from the TV, but not much else. Except for ghosts, that is. And I'm not talking about ghost Pokemon. You see right here, in this room next to you, what looks like a little girl. There's no way to interact with these ghosts either, and they aren't even hostile to you. You never fight them or talk to them, which honestly makes them that much creepier. Now, what about the region's evil teams, gym leaders, and legendaries, you may ask? Well, let's start with the gym leaders. Rock is the first one. He uses rock types, which I hate. Why do 3 of the first 4 Pokemon generations have to have rock type gyms as the first ones? Because the fire type starter, they're really hard to do, especially if you can't find a water or grass type. Next is Gardena, a grass type user, and frankly a pushover, well at least if you have Chimchar. The third gym leader varies depending on which version of the game you're playing. Platinum, the third gym leader, is Fontiana, a ghost-type user, who has a broken French accent, which doesn't make any sense now that Kalos is a thing. After that is Maylene. She uses fighting types, and people with a foot fetish must love her. Then there's Crasher Wake, who's just a fat guy with mental problems, and uses water types. In Diamond and Pearl, the order of these 3 is different, with Maylene being the third gym leader, Crasher Wake being 4th, and Fontiana being 5th. But they changed the order to create less of a gap between the second and third gyms. The 6th gym leader is actually Rock's father, Brian. His steel types are tough to beat without a water, fire, or ground type, which I thankfully had. Number 7 is Candace. I can't tell if she's 6 or if she's 26, and I feel bad for not being able to tell, but her ice types are ridiculously easy to beat with Infernape. And lastly, there's Volkner. I like how he's such a pro at battling that he's bored with it, and all his team are pretty strong electric types. I could have had a cool battle on my hands, but I had a Garchomp, so it was one of the easiest battles in the history of me playing video games. So if you want this fight to be good, yeah, don't have Garchomp or Torterra, because yeah. And that's Sinnoh's gym leaders for you. Well, they're not as iconic as Kanto's or Johto's, but they do have a decent amount of personality compared to them. Black and White would further build upon a gym leader's personality, giving us the best in the series in my opinions in terms of character, but I'll talk about that another time. By another time, I probably mean I don't know, 5 years from now. So stay tuned. Now, on to Sinnoh's evil team, Team Galactic. In previous games, there's Team Rocket, who's basically just the Mafia. And then there's Team Magma/Aqua, who are revolutionaries who use crime to achieve their goals. Team Galactic, meanwhile, is interested in world domination, and their leader, Cyrus, is the most evil character in the franchise after Geddes. He sees emotion and spirit as having no purpose and wants to rid the world of both. You see him for the first time very early on in the game in various locations. You don't know who he is exactly, giving him a mysterious vibe. Like any other team, they do a bunch of evil stuff and you stop them. You raid their bases, etc. Although one question I have is why all the grunts have that stupid bowl cut and dyed their hair blue. Oh, and his crew, honestly, are actually pretty hot. On a darker note, they do some pretty messed up stuff, while also accomplishing quite a bit too. They even managed to capture a few legendary Pokemon, Mesprit, Uxie, and Asleep, and then experiment on them, with their own scientists saying what they did was messed up. But in my opinion, the most unsettling thing about Team Galactic is how much they feel like a cult. The Grunts are told that they're gonna rule the world and get everything they ever wanted. Meanwhile, Cyrus sees his own followers as tools he's using to achieve his own selfish goals. Then there's the climactic showdown at Mount Coronet. Team Galactic invades the area and make their way to Spear Pillar to summon two of the four most powerful legendary Pokemon in the series, Dialga and Palkia, the gods of time and space, which he plans to use to erase the current universe or replace it with one without spirit or emotion. You get to fight a cool double battle against Commander Mars and Jupiter with Fairy on your side, and then the Pokemon League champion Cynthia shows up. You meet her quite a few times before this, kind of like Steven. She helps you out and is a great character overall. She's tough and intelligent, but a nice person. But enough about her, let's get back to the story. Cyrus uses the red chain created by the legendary lake Pokemon he captured to get Dialga and Palkia to recreate the universe. However, something terrifying happens. A shadowy entity comes to stop him. This is the second most powerful being in the Pokemon universe after Arceus himself, Giratina. And I love how Cyrus doesn't seem to be scared until the last second, that is, when Giratina takes him back to his own realm. This is the Distortion World, an odd place. Not exactly creepy or unnerving, well, a little bit I guess, but disorienting and confusing. There's these platforms that move in a confusing way, there's upside down gravity, and these puzzles with the Lake Guardians helping you out. You also find and fight Cyrus for the final time. And still, Cyrus doesn't seem to be scared of Giratina or his situation, and decides to stay in the Distortion World. I mean, at least he's gonna be happy in a place like this without emotion or spirit, so I guess he got his wish in the end after all. After that, you finally get to capture Giratina, the closest equivalent to Hades in the Pokemon world. And no, he's not the equivalent of the devil. Giratina isn't evil, he brings necessary balance to the world, and the only thing he has in common with the devil is being banished, so I think he gets too bad of a rap that he doesn't deserve. Moving on, this whole Distortion World saga is only in Platinum. In Diamond, you just fight Dialga. In Pearl, you only fight Palkia. And, those two are much easier to catch than Giratina. So, thank God Empoleon is part Steel type. After leaving the Distortion World, you could actually capture the Lake Trio now too if you wanted to. Although I held off on doing that until after I beat the Elite Four. Speaking of which, Sinnoh's Elite Four has gotta be one of my favorite Elite Fours in the series. Before doing anything, be sure to grind until your party's at least in the mid-level 50s, or else this is gonna be a nightmare. Well, to be honest, it's a nightmare anyway, even while you're sufficiently leveled. So, yeah. We don't start off too hard. Aaron is a bug-type user, and as such, he goes down pretty easily. Bertha and her ground types put up a decent fight, but also go down pretty easily, as long as you have a grass or water type, or another ground type to use Earthquake. Third up is Flint, a fire type user whose entire personality is based off fire and heat. A water type will destroy his whole team. And lastly is Lucian. Her team are all psychic types. They're not hard to take out, but do a lot of damage. Once the player makes it past all of that, the greatest Pokemon champion of all time lies on the floor above, waiting for their challenge. The fight against Cynthia is awesome. Like I said earlier, her showing up throughout the whole game lets the player know her and get used to her, and look forward to this. Overall, she is ranked as most people's favorite champion in the series, and no, it's not just because she's hot, although, I mean, that does play a big part in it, but there's other reasons. Like how her team is ridiculously strong, not just high level, but varied in typing and moves. Most of her Pokemon have moves to back up their weaknesses, like her Milotic knowing Ice Spin to cover up its weakness to grass, or you have her Lucario who knows Stone Edge to cover its weakness to fire. Her strongest Pokemon of all is her Garchomp. It's level 62, is fast, and knows Earthquake to counter its weakness to Ice, and Dragon Rush to cover its weakness to Dragon. The thing is though, that Dragon Rush has a 25% chance of missing, and with some luck, I was able to get some hits in with Dragon Claw with my own Garchomp, and down it went. Once your Garchomp goes down, the fight gets much easier, although still pretty difficult. Cynthia's Spirit Tomb isn't weak to anything, yet goes down the fastest out of her whole team. Her Togekiss is just annoying. Her Milotic spams Mirror Coat, and her Roserade can poison your whole team. But a fire type takes it out so fast that it's not really much of a concern. Lastly is her Lucario. It's fast, hits hard, knows extreme speed, which screwed me over so much. While my Infernape didn't make it through it, my Garchomp avenged it. And with that, Cynthia is beaten, and like every other champion, so far, excluding Blue at least, she loved the battle, with no sign of being upset at her loss. Rowan comes in to congratulate the player on their victory, and joins it too as the player and their team are added to the Hall of Fame, drawing this adventure to a close. But upon reopening your save file, a new one begins. Sinnoh has so much bonus content, more than any other game in the series up to this point, excluding maybe Crystal. First, let's go over the new legendaries you can get after beating the main story. And oh boy, are there a lot of them! Although first, I should mention a lake trio. After beating Giratina, you can visit caves throughout Sinnoh and capture Uxie and Asleep. Mesprit though, leaves a cave to wander the land as a roaming legendary. Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with what roaming legendaries are, they're basically legendaries that wander around a certain route in the tall grass. Whichever route they're on is random, and it changes every time the player enters a new one. Now, in previous games, there is no easy way to track them down, but at least in this game, there's a new Poketech app that comes quite handy in knowing where they are. That's not it though, because they run away after only one turn, so you can only do a little bit of damage each turn, until they finally get down to red after a good amount of turns. And then their capture rate is super low, so it takes forever to finally catch them. Quick Balls and Dust Balls are your friends. This would be a good Pokemon to use your Master Ball on, only Platinum has 5 roaming legendaries. Mesprit, Cresselia, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. Needless to say, I spent a good couple of hours doing this and tracking them all down to catch them. On the positive side of things though, after you beat the game, you can now visit the Battle Zone. Here lies the Battle Frontier. Many more strong trainers to fight against, and the Battleground. In the Battleground, it's possible to rematch 3 gym leaders a day, which is a huge improvement over the way it was in Emerald, where I spent hours trying to get a single gym leader rematch, but nothing. When I was writing the script for Emerald, I assumed that by the end I'll be able to at least get 1 gym leader, but I spent a good, I don't know how many, 6 hours playing the game after I beat it to try to get a gym leader rematch? I mean, I was grinding for Steven too, but I got nothing. Gym leader rematches in Emerald are just so bad. But in this game, they're much better. One last area of interest in the Battle Zone is Mount Stark, where you take down the last of Team Galactic, where the rest of them either quit or get arrested. It's also home to another legendary, Heatron, who is one of the most forgettable in this series if I'm being honest. Yet another legendary can be found in Snow Point, but to get to it, the player has to transfer Regice, Regirock, and Registeel from a Gen 3 game. If you bring all of them into the temple, it brings a mysterious statue to life. This is Regigigas, who sucks. First off, he's only level 1, at least in Platinum, and 2, his ability halves his attack and speed for the first few turns of battle. And finally, at long last, at Mount Coronet, you can finally capture Dialga and Palkia, bringing Platinum's legendary count to 12. Well, I mean, if you count special event Pokemon, it'd be up to 18, I think. For one last final challenge, to truly draw things to a close, you can rematch the Elite Four, only this time they're all higher level. Much higher level. In fact, because of all the grinding I did for this final fight, my team here is the strongest Pokemon team I have ever assembled throughout all my years of playing the franchise, which isn't very impressive honestly, but I thought I'd throw that out there. Cynthia is even stronger than she was before, her Pokemon being in the level 70s. Although, just like with Red, it's doable to beat her team with a low-level team, at least in the 60s, if you have some strong items and strong moves. Regardless, I think it's one of the best fights in the series like before, and the perfect thing to end the adventure off on. And that was Pokemon Platinum, which I honestly forgot how good it was until I replayed it. Maybe it was just because it wasn't a good time in my life, or maybe because of playing Diamond instead of Platinum, but I had so much more fun this time around. Gen 4 added a lot of cool elements, some great areas to explore, great characters, a decent story, some serious threats, and one of the best final fights in the history of the series. Unfortunately, from what I've heard from people, its remake Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl weren't as good of remakes compared to Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which is kind of disappointing. Either way though, this generation is worth checking out if you haven't already. Sure, it hasn't aged as well as others, but it's still a great game. Speaking of great games though, I really hope Scarlet and Violet are gonna be good. It looked pretty good though, so I can't wait to play them. I don't know, I haven't really paid attention to what other people have said. I mean, there's some cool stuff in it. I don't know, a lot of people are just critical of a lot of stuff. So I'm kind of skeptical about some stuff, so I'll see you all later anyway, everyone.